You may have heard him on Risk or seen him at one of the 3 Moth Grand Slams he's been on or at Pros of Pi, and I'm thrilled to have him here for the very first time. Please give it up for Richard Cardillo.
Yeah. It's August of 1994, and I finally screwed up enough courage to move in with my partner of 3 years. And that was a big deal for me. There was a little backstory there. I had only come out of the closet about 6 to 8 months before I met him. And prior to that, I had spent the previous 14 years as a monk in a monastery. So I was a little bit unpracticed. And Peter was fantastic. When I met him, when I came to New York City and moved in and met him right away, not moved in, I wouldn't move in with him. He kind of taught me the ropes. I let him know about my past. I tried to teach him about my vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And he tried to teach me about the vows of parties, poppers, and pooping around, just going at it. And it took a while. What happened was I kept saying, I can't move in with you. I just don't know if I'm established enough as a gay man to do that. And he kept saying, okay, but look what's happening. He lived on Clinton and Houston in Lower East Side. And he said, I have this 1,000 square foot apartment and I'm paying $200 a month for it. This was 1993, 94, 92. And I was paying $1,500 for a studio that was like a closet near Astor Place. So he kept saying, move in, move in. I'm like, what if I'm not gay? What if I find out that this isn't for me? What do I do? And he called me one day at work, and he said, you're not going to believe this. They just announced our building's going condo, and they're giving us 50% off the insider price to stay there. And I want you to buy this place with me. And that's when I knew I was homosexual. This was real estate, baby. This was real estate. So I moved in with him, got used to the neighborhood really fast on the Lower East Side. And the neighbors that took a shine to me right away, really loved being with me, were our neighbors right across the hall, Mr. and Mrs. Mandlebaum. Mr. and Mrs. Mandlebaum were ancient. They were in their 80s, devout Orthodox Jews. So I got very used to just going over and asking if they needed any favors done for them, if I can go to the store for them. It was all really nice, but within a very short amount of time, I became their extra special Shabbos Goy. A little bit of explanation for those that don't know. For an Orthodox Jew, it is completely forbidden to do any work whatsoever on the Sabbath. If a non-Jew wants to do that work for you unpaid, well, then it's kosher, so to speak. So I would go in on the Sabbath, I'd open the doors for them, I'd turn on their oven, I'd make some phone calls, I'd take out the garbage. It was really, really nice. It wasn't all just one way, though. They had agreed, because don't forget this was the early 90s, pre-FedEx and Amazon Prime, they had agreed to accept all of our parcels and packages to their house. That was a big deal because the post office was 20 blocks away, and to schlep there after work would have been horrible. So it kind of worked out really, really well for everybody involved. But she was so nosy, that Mrs. Mandlebaum. I'd hear, Richard, delivery! And I'd go out into the hallway, and she'd have my box, and she'd be shaking it at her ear, saying, what have we here? And I just would ignore her. And she was even more nosy about my relationship with Peter. She knew, because they had a twin, looking apartment, she knew the layout. So she'd say, so I'm always wondering, and I mix up, which one of you sleeps in the bedroom and which one of you sleeps in the living room? And I'd evade the answer, and I'd go home, and I'd unload on Peter, and I'd say, Peter, she's asking all these questions again. He'd howl laughing. He had this southern charm. He was born and raised in Selma, Alabama. He would take this and just laugh about it. He said, well, Richard, bless her heart, that Mrs. Mandlebaum, isn't she precious? Why don't you just go over there right now and tell her the truth? Tell her you're the top, I'm the bottom, and there ain't no bunk bed. I'm like, no. Very shortly after that, Pete got really, really, really sick. We went to the doctor. Unfortunately, he tested positive for the HIV/AIDS virus. The doctor got his health back right away and immediately sent us for counseling on a regular basis. And the counseling was supposed to help us learn to live as a serodiscordant couple. He stayed positive, I stayed negative. And it also wanted to teach us to look at some of the challenges, especially like safer sex, so we weren't passing the virus back and forth between us. And from the get-go, this woman who was our counselor tried to talk us into introducing into our sex lives the use of toys. The only toys I was familiar with were the toys I bought for my nieces and nephews at holiday time. I was so vanilla, I didn't know what she was talking about. And she kept recommending one specific toy. Some background. My name is Richard Cardillo. But until the age of about 14, I was a dick. I wasn't a Rick, I wasn't a Ricky, I wasn't a Richie, I was a dick. And my last name simply screamed out for mockery. So every time I walked into the playground in grammar school, I'd hear that haunting chant over and over. Here comes Dick Cardillo, here comes Dick Cardillo. And it would go on, and it was relentless. And I just had to learn how to get a thick skin. And years went by with all of this bullshit. And it's so funny. I tell you guys this story tonight, and I know I'm going to be walking through Washington Square Park, getting on the F train, something like that, and I'm going to hear very, very sotto voce, there goes Dick Cardillo. I know, it's a forever thing. It goes on and on and on. So I was hard pressed to introduce into my, so to speak, I was hard pressed, so to speak, to introduce into my sex life anything whose name was going to serve as a trigger warning to all the abuse that was heaped on me for years. But I was a trooper. I said, okay, I'll buy the damn thing, but I'm too embarrassed. I need a catalog. I'm not buying it in person. The counselor gave me one of her catalogs. I go home. I am more frustrated than ever. I'm just reeling from all of this. I get inside the door to my apartment and I hear, Richard, a favor, please, Mrs. Mandlebaum. What is it, Mrs. Mandlebaum? I go over. She said, it's the Sabbath and I can't use the phone. Could you do me a favor? Could you call up Sears Catalog and order that little umbrella for me so that when I go to temple I have something to carry? I said, yes, Mrs. Mandlebaum, I will get that for you. I make her phone call. I take care of the whole thing. I leave. Then I go home to my apartment to take care of my catalog order. So I'm going through the catalog and I'm looking. I found the one I wanted. It had the name Jeff Stryker emblazoned on the shaft of it. You could go home and Google that name tonight, and you'll get an idea of the length and girth of that thing. It was just friggin' amazing. It was amazing. 2 weeks later, Richard, delivery. I love it. I go over, what is it, Mrs. Mandlebaum? I go inside her apartment, and on the front table, there's 2 oblong boxes. And the one with my name and address on it is ripped open on the top. And I start to freak. And I wanted to come out with, who the hell opened that thing? But I couldn't. I just said, who the heck opened that thing? She said, well, I thought it was my umbrella, so I had to look inside, but I think that's yours. I'm like, oh my God, she saw it. She knows I'm a sodomite. She knows what I'm up to. She knows it. She's got us all figured out. And I just grabbed the thing and I ran the hell out of there. And I got back to my apartment and I started screaming, Peter, she saw it. She knows what's going on. And of course, Peter just starts howling, laughing at the whole thing. And he's trying to calm me down. He said, well, Richard, why don't you just face the music? You are no longer the Shabbos Goy. You are now the Shabbos Gay. I'm like, that's not funny. He takes the dildo out and he's waving it up in the air. And he said, and this is our new Shabbos Goy toy. And I'm like, stop that. That's just not funny. Cut it out. I go run into the back room and I slam the door on the bedroom. And he starts screaming after me, come back, little shiksa. Needless to say, we didn't use that toy too much. Just didn't get used. That was about 25 years ago, now 30 years ago now. In 2012, unfortunately, Pete died. He passed on. And it took me about a year after that to finally get my act together enough to put together a yard sale. We had 18 years of amassing crap. We had a house up in the country too. And I just had to get rid of it all. So I went up to the house in the country and I opened up every closet and I opened up everything to get everything out of the attics. And I opened up one of the boxes and there it is. The dildo. I got a little weepy, got a little nostalgic, a little wistful. But more than anything, it hit me how far I had come in all those years to be happy with who I am and to be able to just use things like that and be pretty positive about it. But I couldn't sell it. I couldn't sell it. I just couldn't face somebody saying at a tag sale, so what kind of a deal can you make me on the tea cozy, the popcorn popper, the ab roller, and that dildo? So I just couldn't do it. So I threw it away in recyclables, but I threw it away. I'm 59 this year, and I am finally back in my life to toys again. And they're toys for my 4 glorious, wonderful, beautiful grandnieces and nephews. And all I hope for them is that they rip open every box with such curiosity for the rest of their lives. Thank you.
Comes the world